For our final project for our Creativity and Foundations class, I wanted originally to do something that had to do with my personal life, because I feel like I do so much for other people with my job and parenting. But honestly, I felt like I struggled to find something to do that felt creative with the constraint of that it was for the class, which is kind of relating back to our course material that says a lot of times we find intrinsic motivation to be creative, whereas when it's for a class or for something that is for a specific deadline, the challenge of finding that motivation to get that done becomes more challenging. So honestly, I felt like I had a mental block trying to find something to do that was creative for our class. So I went and thought about my work life, and I tried to do a little bit of problem finding, a little bit of problem solving for what could I do to make my life easier, since I feel like I have so much going on and so much to do. So the story I'm about to tell you has to do about this lovely piece of fabric, or multiple pieces of fabric. This is my special math apron. And I want to go into why this is needed and how it has completely changed the way that I teach. This entire experience starts with how our math department implemented the ideas in this book called Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Logedel, which really talks about the importance of getting students to be thinking rather than mimicking what teachers are doing, having them work together with students on surfaces that are non-permanent, so typically whiteboards around the room, as you can see here. They are working together in a group that is randomly assigned, typically about 3 students if possible. 2 or 4 students can work as well if 3 is not possible. And there's 1 marker. Now, these experiences provide students with opportunities to really discuss, collaborate, listen to each other, and talk about what it is that they are going to be doing with this task. Now, you're going to see here, this is image or film of my classroom. So you can see around the room there are whiteboards, we have markers, comfortable space for students to learn, discuss, and collaborate with each other. As we were just getting this system implemented where we're having students up at boards, I was trying to incorporate it more into my traditional curriculum. So instead of having students sit and take notes, I was trying to give them examples that they could do up at the boards to communicate and collaborate with their group members. And I started to do these where we were doing 1 problem together as a class. But then I started to see that students were getting bored waiting around. Some groups worked way faster than others. And while I loved this idea of having students up at boards and us talking about a problem and going over the answers and solutions, I felt that it wasn't giving the students what they needed, and I felt that the class was not getting through the curriculum in the way that I wanted. And I did notice that students were definitely not as engaged as they should be. So this is where I started to incorporate my cards. Now, the cards are a big way that I teach. So instead of having these problems be done synchronously together as a class up at the board, these were all the questions that we were going to go through, printed on little cards. And I would have students start to work through together with their group members at their own pace. And then I would want them to flag me down when they thought that they had the correct answer. Now, I knew that this was going to make my life very busy going through the class, but I wanted to try it out because I felt like students really deserve to have a more authentic, individualized experience. So we gave it a shot. And it went about as well as you might think it would go. So originally, I kept these cards at my desk. They were just plain white cards. I printed them out. And we're pretending that the students are in the room, and you can tell this was a typical time. I was sprinting. Now, issue being, my cards started to get disorganized. They're all in the same colored pieces of paper. I'm running to try to help students. And I keep going back to my cards, and now they're getting disorganized. And this is what the typical scene was like. Trying to grab different cards off the desk, give them to students, run back. And in the heat of the moment, I'm getting quick, piles are getting mixed. And honestly, it's causing more problems than I think it is, because students are now also still waiting like they were before. But now I'm also flustered. And I figured this needed to change. And you could see the frequency that I'd be going up and running to my desk. I was exhausted by the end of the day, especially if I was doing this every single period of the day. Run up, grab my card, go to another student station, and go back. With these cards being disorganized, the way that it was working was not very efficient. I had an idea in my head of how I wanted this to go, but I was just continuously stopping, going, and the students were waiting around more than they should have. I could see they're always flagging me down for help, sprinting. By the end of the day, I'd have walked between 4 and 5 miles just in my classroom. So I tried to get the system under control and at least start to better my organization with the cards. So as you can see here, this first set is what we were seeing with. Eventually I progressed to have them be color-coded, and I did this right away by highlighting them with different colors. Then I went to color coding the papers to help keep them separate, and I also did it in rainbow order so that you could see what order they were supposed to go in visually, and it was helpful for me. But I started to use cardstock finally. It was more durable, the paper was very flimsy, and I could see that students were being a little bit rough with them, and I figured the cardstock would work best and have the most long-lasting ability. So the progression of the cards, extensive. Here comes the next problem. I got the cards situated. This is great. They're color-coded, I can see where they're supposed to go. Now I'm trying to hold them all at once because I was really tired of running to my desk, and I figured I could hold them in my hands and I could still be organized, and I don't have to run to my desk as much because I can hold about 4 or 5 stacks in my hand. Now we're seeing the issue of I have small hands and I cannot hold these very well, and I would try to run back and forth to students, and now I'm disorganized again. I'm seeing the same type of issue where students are still waiting for me to get through these problems. But I really wanted to minimize stopping at my desk, and I would joke with my students that I really wished I had something to help me be a little bit more organized and efficient, and where I could still use my hands to help them. So I made it myself. Here you'll see the first prototype and currently the working version of my math apron. Now you'll notice up at the top there, I have 11 smaller sized pockets. Each one of these pockets holds a stack of the colored cards that you saw me using to move around the room, with 2 bonus pockets down at the bottom. Typically I will put a whiteboard marker in here and an eraser to be able to help with students. I'll also be able to put enrichment problems in those pockets for groups that get a little farther than other groups do. So this apron cost me about $10 to create. I used dish towels to sew them together, and now I can sew. However, my constraints being I do not have a sewing machine, and I knew I wanted a lot of pockets, a lot of smaller pockets, especially to hold these cards. So I knew that it was going to take time and my hands were going to hurt. And I actually went to our family consumer science home ec teacher at school, and she was able to help me with the edges down at the bottom to make it a little bit cleaner looking, help it to not fray so that I know it would last a little bit longer. All in all, this apron has been incredible, and I'm able to quickly grab things from the pockets, walk around the room, and be able to help students in an efficient manner. And it all started by not being able to hold all of the cards in my hands. Let's try this class situation out now with the apron and see how successful we are. You'll notice here as I'm working with my students, I have my first round of cards that I give to each group. They start with pink, beginning of the rainbow. I am so calm. We're walking around, and as soon as they all have a card, I tell them that they are free to begin. My pink cards go down, and as students are ready for me to check their work, I can now pull out the next card from this lovely, lovely invention of the apron. Yes, I'm still speedy, trying to run around the room to get to all of my students, but I have my hands free to be able to customize the order in which each group is getting a card. Groups move at all different paces. Their problems are looking great. I can see right away what color they recently had on their card. So if they had a yellow card, they get a pink. If they had a yellow card, they get a green. If they had a green, they get a blue, and so on. This maximized the amount of time I was able to spend with groups, the amount of time that I was able to run around and help out groups and get them moving so that they weren't around waiting. This apron has revolutionized the way that I teach. Each group is able to collaborate with each other. They are able to work at their own pace. And honestly, I feel like I can be a more organized and more efficient teacher to help them get through the experience. So as you can see, as soon as I put that apron on, I felt like a rock star.
Because I'm happy.